Myths from all around the world speak about gods, beings that have spent a good amount of time on our planet. Why did they visit us and why did they stay here? There are many hypotheses, especially since the emergence of paleoastronautics, some of them incredibly fantastic. They might be space explorers, extraterrestrials who came to extract gold from us to spread it in the atmosphere of their planet, or they might be spirits from the higher layers of a planet who came to learn how to evolve, and so on. All these more or less absurd versions regarding the purpose of the arrival of these beings on our planet ignore that of the ancients. The gods did not come willingly to Earth, but were exiled here. Like Sophia of the Gnostics. The most well-known such legend is the Christian one, which claims that the seraphim Lucifer, in an attempt to dethrone his father, fought with his brother, the archangel Michael. Being defeated, Lucifer and his followers were cast down to earth, from that moment on being known as fallen angels or demons. Although this legend does not exist in the Bible, Christians matched Lucifer with Satan, which is why the only mentions of this war are found in the New Testament. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. Revelation 12 verses 3-4. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent, called the devil, and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Revelation 12 verses 7-9. And he said unto them, I beheld Satan as lightning fall from heaven. The Gospel of Luke 10 verse 18. Christian mythology says that the dragon was the seraphim Lucifer, Helel in Hebrew, or Satan, the first and most beautiful of the angels. The Book of Adam and Eve and the Slavonic translation of the Book of Enoch consider him an archangel, not a seraphim. One version of the legend says that Lucifer rebelled against his father to take his place. In the Quran we encounter another version, pride being the reason why Lucifer, called Iblis here, rebelled, as he refused to bow down to humans, as Allah, the supreme God, had demanded of him. And a third version is the one where Lucifer chose to rebel out of jealousy, because God loved humans more than angels. The first version is the most plausible, as the war took place before humans appeared on earth. The supreme God's army was led by the archangel Michael, who managed to defeat Lucifer and cast him down to earth with the other rebellious angels. However, we have already seen that this war refers to that of the eons imprisoned in the planets of our solar system, which led to the shaping of Earth in the form we know it today, after the proto-Earth collided with Jupiter. The Hittites and Hurrians believed that a long time ago, Allah was king in heaven, where he ruled for 9 periods. In the 9th period, Anu, his cupbearer and the first of the gods, challenged him to a fight. Defeated, Allah was forced to take refuge on earth and Anu became the new ruler of Kamea, the celestial palace of the gods. Allah did not come alone on our planet, but accompanied by his followers, one of them being Kamarbi, Anu's son, who later tried to win the throne by the same method as his father. In Tibet there was the idea that Jambudvipa, Earth, the continent south of Mount Meru, the house of the gods, was originally empty. One day, one of the gods of the celestial kingdom had an unworthy thought, which caused him to fall to Jambudvipa. Along with him fell other accomplices, also because unworthy thoughts. Initially, the gods had the ability to fly. However, after tasting a nectar as sweet as honey, an evil overtook them. They became nervous and jealous and probably most importantly, they lost their ability to fly. We do not know exactly what was that unworthy thought that caused the fall of the gods, but it is possible that it had something to do with the usurpation of the throne, as in other legends. The Aztecs believed that the first divine arrival on earth was also the result of a battle between gods. Myths say that 4 deities killed the female crocodile Cipacli and then made the world from her remains. Because he lost a leg during the fight, Tezcatlipoca became the first son, the first ruler. His angry brother, Quetzalcoatl, struck him with a stone bat and threw him out of the sky, becoming the new sun. Tezcatlipoca landed on earth and, in revenge, ordered jaguars to kill all the people in the world. Quetzalcoatl created other people, but his brother transformed them all into monkeys. Furious, Quetzalcoatl destroyed the monkey people with a hurricane and refused to be sun anymore, a role taken over by another brother of them, Tlaloc. The Japanese people used to tell a story about Takuma no Hara, the high celestial plane, which was ruled by 2 brothers, the goddess of the sun, Amaterasu Amakami, and the god of storm, Susanoo. They did not get along very well, with the god of storm often teasing his sister. One day he forcibly entered the room where Amaterasu had locked herself in, to plant a form of material life inside her, in other words, to rape her. The goddess of the sun was extremely angry and locked herself in a heavenly cave, leaving the world in darkness. The gods tried to convince her to come out of the cave by giving her various objects, but Amaterasu refused them all. However, she was convinced to come out when another goddess, Ain-no-Uzum, the heavenly maiden, stripped naked and began to obscenely dance in front of the cave. Hearing the noise of the gods, Amaterasu came out. When she looked at herself in a mirror, her good mood returned. However, for his actions, Susanoo was mercilessly expelled and condemned to live on earth and never return to heaven again, a story similar to that of the Gnostic Sophia. The ancient Greeks believed that Uranus, the first ruler of the universe, had the gift of prophecy. Therefore, he learned from a vision that one of his children would dethrone him. To prevent this, he locked all of his children, Titans, Cyclopes, and Centaurmanes, in Tartarus, a prison inside the earth. The Titans managed to free themselves and rebelled against their father. Later, when the old gods were introduced into the pantheon of the new gods, the myth of Hephaestus, the god of blacksmiths, appeared. Homer said that Hephaestus was so ugly that his mother, Hera, threw him out of heaven. He fell for 9 days and nights until he landed in the ocean, where he was saved by the Oceanides Thetis and Eurynomy. Another version of the legend says that Zeus was the one who threw Hephaestus off Mount Olympus because the blacksmith defended his mother when the king of the gods wanted to punish her for rebellion. Hephaestus fell for only 1 day, landing on the island of Lemnos. Sintians, the local peoples, took care of him and taught him the art of crafts. In both versions, Hephaestus became lame after the fall, just like Tezcatlipoca of the Aztecs. A similar myth to that of Uranus was found in Scandinavia, where a prophecy, like that of the Greeks, said that the gods would be destroyed by the children of god Loki and giantess Angrboda, wolf Fenrir, goddess Hel, and serpent Jormungandr, so they were banished from the world of the gods, Asgard. Fenrir was chained to a rock 1 kilometer underground. Hel became the ruler of the underworld and Jormungandr was thrown into the ocean surrounding Midgard, Earth. Unfortunately for the gods, the prophecy was fulfilled during Ragnarok, the final battle between gods and giants. The Dogon people of Mali tell the story of Namo, who was the first being created by the sky goddess, Amma. Shortly after his birth, Namo multiplied, becoming 4 pairs of twins. One of the twins rebelled against the universal order created by Amma, so in order to restore order, the goddess cut him into pieces and scattered his body across the earth. Namo used his body to feed the people and gave them his principles about life. In ancient religions, exile was the ultimate punishment given to a god. In a Babylonian text, Marduk complained that he was exiled from his city, Babylon. In another myth called Enlil and Ninlil, the god of storm received the same punishment for raping the young Sud, who later became Ninlo. While the goddess was bathing in a river, Enlil, who happened to be passing by, saw her naked. Getting very horny, he tried to use his charm on the young goddess. But she refused him, stating that she was a virgin, and probably wanting to remain so until marriage. Pretending to accept the refusal, he invited the black-eyed virgin for a boat ride. If in the Japanese myth there was an attempted rape, in the Sumerian one the rape actually happened. The naive virgin accepted the ride and Enlil raped her when they reached the open sea. For his deed he was banished and sent to the underworld. Contrary to all expectations, the goddess followed him and Enlil took her as his wife, giving her the title of Ninlil, Lady of the Wind. It is also said in the myth that, in fact, it was not Enlil who seduced her, but the opposite. Her mother sent her to bathe on the road where the god usually passed, hoping that he would fall in love with her once he saw her in all her splendor. Mission accomplished without any problems. All these legends of different peoples, sometimes separated by thousands of kilometers, speak of the true reason for the gods settling on earth, namely exile. Therefore, it would not be out of place to accept what our ancestors have told us instead of looking for other illogical explanations, based on religious indoctrination or evolutionary stubbornness. Therefore, we can ask ourselves, if the real reason for this exile was not the rebellion of the eldest son against his father, but one of a sexual nature. The Sumerians believed that Enlil was exiled from the house of the gods because he raped the virgin Ninlil. For the Japanese, Susanoo was banished to our planet after attempting to rape his sister. In both cases, the reason for exile is the rape/attempted rape. The Indians also have a sexual aggression in their holy books, but they attributed it to the birth of the world and eliminated the exile. According to the Vedas, one day the god Prajapati wanted to rape his daughter, Usas. To escape him, the girl transformed into a deer and hid in the forest. But her father found her and transformed into a stag to carry out his rape plan. Shocked by this act, the gods punished him. When Vedic religion became Brahmanism, Prajapati became Shiva, none other than Enki, as we have already proved. As Susanoo of the Japanese is also Enki, we find again a connection between the same character and rape. Similarly, the Egyptians modified the story to hide the true reason for the presence of the gods on our planet. Two brothers, Geb, the god of earth, and Nut, the goddess of the sky, decided to mate. For unknown reasons, the supreme god Ra was against this relationship and separated the two brothers. But it was too late, Nut was already pregnant. Furious, Ra, the sun god, forbade her to give birth during the 360 days of the year that belonged to him. The Egyptian calendar was a solar one. However, the god Thoth took pity on her and offered her 5 additional days to give birth, days won a dice game from the moon, from that moment on the year having 365 days. In this myth, Geb, the god of earth, is Enki of the Sumerians, the lord of earth. His sister, the goddess of the sky, is NINHURSAG, often called Queen of Heaven. And we have matched Ra with an of the Sumerians. Ra's fierce opposition to this sexual relationship suggests its abnormality, which leads to the possibility of the same rape mentioned by other peoples. A papyrus from the end of the Pharaonic civilization, from the 30th dynasty, found in Soft El Hinna, in the Nile Delta, sheds light on this story, claiming that Geb raped his mother. But in reality it was not Tefnut, Geb's mother, the victim of the sexual assault, but his sister, who was considered in most cultures the mother of the gods and humans. The Greeks also spoke of an abduction and a rape. God of the underworld, Hades, saw his niece one day, Persephone, the daughter of gods Zeus and Demeter. Overcome by loneliness and madly in love, Hades decided to marry his niece. But knowing that she would not willingly accompany him to the underworld, he abducted her and took her to his world, where he married her. Although the rape is not explicitly stated, we imagine that there were sexual relations between the horny god and his beautiful bride. Learning of what happened, the girl's mother, Demeter, decided to devastate the earth until her daughter was returned. Fearing that all living beings on earth might die, the gods asked Hades to send Persephone back. Because he refused, the gods sent the demigod Hercules to retrieve her. Surprisingly, when the girl arrived in her mother's arms, she asked to be allowed to return to her husband. To appease both spouses and her mother, Zeus decided that Persephone would live half a year on earth, with her mother, and half a year in the underworld, with her husband. Preferring to stay with her rapist, Persephone reacted just like Ninlil of the Sumerians. We have identified Hades with Enki, so this is the same event recorded by many other ancient peoples. If the god of wisdom was the sexual aggressor, who was his victim? For the Japanese, she was his sister. For the peoples of Mesopotamia, the first goddess that Enki had a relationship with was also his sister. In a myth from around 1800 DC, Enki mated with NINHURSAG, lady of the high mountain, who gave birth to Ninsar, lady of the green plants. Enki also mated with his daughter, and from their union the goddess Ninkura, lady of the land, was born. She also was impregnated by Enki and gave birth to Utu, vegetation. The god also slept with Utu, but NINHURSAG took his seed and transformed it into 8 plants that Enki ate and fell ill, with 8 organs affected. In the end she forgave him and, to cure him, created 8 divine beings, Abu, Nintella, Ninsutu, Ninkasi, Nansha, Azimua, Ninti, and Inshag, 1 for each organ affected by the disease. Although the myth has been interpreted as a reference to fresh water, represented by Enki, which waters the earth, NINHURSAG, helping plants to grow, the story makes more sense not metaphorically, but literally. Enki and NINHURSAG had sexual intercourse. Many other ancient writings mention this relationship. In a Babylonian text, goddess Ishtar married Sin, god of the moon. In Assyria, in the 9th century BC, god Ashur was her husband. In Sumerian mythology, Dumuzi, or Tammuz, was the first lover of goddess Inanna/Ishtar. The Babylonians even called him the only brother of Ishtar. In Egypt, Osiris and Isis were 2 divine siblings who loved each other even from their mother's womb. Sin, Ashur, Dumuzi, Tammuz, and Osiris are different names of Enki, while Inanna/Ishtar or Isis is his sister, NINHURSAG. The Hittite legend Kingship in Heaven also mentions this relationship. Anu's eldest son, Kamarbi, mated countless times with the goddess of the mountain. We have matched Kamarbi with Enki, and the goddess of the mountain can only be the lady of the high mountain, NINHURSAG. A new connection between them is indicated by another Sumerian text in which NINHURSAG is called Sir, meaning snake. This was usually ENKI's epithet, and the fact that they were both called snakes suggests that they were part of the same family. Although all these myths tell us that NINHURSAG willingly slept with ENKI, we cannot forget the one who claims that she was raped, following her aggressor into exile and even marrying him. The exile caused by a sexual act is also well hidden in the Bible, at its beginning. The book of Genesis tells us that the first humans were expelled from the Garden of Eden after eating the fruit of knowledge. The beauty pygmies of Congo have a similar myth. The Supreme Being created a paradise for humans to live in and forbade them to eat from the tree of Tahu. Humans broke the rule and were forced to endure the hardships of mortal life. Knowledge in the Old Testament usually refers to sexual relations. For example, and Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived, and bare Cain, Genesis 4 verse 1, and Cain knew his wife, and she conceived, and bare Enoch, Genesis 4 verse 17, and Adam knew his wife again, and she bare a son, and called his name Seth, Genesis 4 verse 25, Behold now, I have 2 daughters which have not known man, Genesis 19 verse 8, but the men would not hearken to him. So the men took his concubine, and brought her forth unto them, and they knew her, and abused her all the night until the morning, Judges 19 verse 25. Therefore, the knowledge gained by the two can only be sexual knowledge. Only after they gained that knowledge and left Eden, Adam and Eve had children. The word Eden comes from the Sumerian Eden, meaning the abode of the righteous, the gods, which became Edenu, steppe or plain, in Akkadian. Adam and Eve were the first humans and their father was the ruler of the world. In Sumer, Enki and NINHURSAG were the first children of An, the ruler of the world. We notice that the God only forbade Adam from touching the fruit of knowledge, and Yahweh Elohim commanded the men, saying, Of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof thou shalt surely die, from which it follows that the forbidden fruit could be his sister's virginity. The serpent, who convinced Eve to sin, is one of the ENKI symbols and its presence in the text doesn't seem accidental. The biblical term for a serpent is nahash, which comes from the root nhsh, meaning to find, to decipher. Therefore, Nahash could also be translated as the one who finds, the one who deciphers, an epithet that would perfectly fit Enki, the god of wisdom and intelligence. A 4,200-year-old clay tablet, currently at the British Museum, depicts Enki in the Garden of Eden. The tree of knowledge and the serpent are also there. According to the Bible, only Adam was banished and Eve followed him willingly, just like in the Sumerian myth of rape. Therefore Yahweh Elohim sent him forth from the Garden of Eden, so he drove out the men. And he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubims, and a flaming sword which turned every way, to keep the way of the tree of life. Genesis 3 verses 23 to 24. Genesis 3 verse 20 says that Adam called his wife's name Eve, because she was the mother of all living. The goddess NINHURSAG was known worldwide as the mother of the gods and humans. The rib from which Eve was created is a word play. In Sumerian, ti means rib but also life. One of NINHURSAG's epithets was Ninti, which can be translated as both Lady of Life and a Lady of the Rib. In the Bible, Adam's wife is described as both being born from his rib and being called a life. The story of Adam and Eve also includes the sexual aggression that was mentioned in numerous myths from around the world. The Gnostic text Apocryphon of John suggests that Eve was raped by the leader of the Archons. The same can be found in On the Origin of the World, where not only this leader, but also other angels raped her, and they did not understand what they were doing, but they came to her. And they seized her and raped her. And they defiled her. Not only did they defile her, but also the seal of the first voice, and their lords and angels have committed sin in all possible ways. There are some similarities between the story of Adam and Eve and the Egyptian myth of Geb and Nut. The name Adam comes from the Hebrew term Adama, which means earth. This makes sense, considering he was made from earth in the biblical version. The name Geb means earth in Egyptian and comes from the Sumerian word Gi, which has the same meaning. Both Geb and Adam named their third son Seth in the Greek translation. They both had 2 sons in conflict, with one killing the other out of jealousy. Adam's murdered son, Abel, was a shepherd, while Geb's son, Osiris, was always represented with a shepherd's crook in his hand. It has been noticed that Geb in this legend is the same as the Sumerian Enki, which means that Adam in the book of Genesis is not the first man, but the first god to set foot on our planet. A clue in this regard is also offered by the Scythian Gnostics, for whom one of the Aeons was Adama, whose son, Seth, was incarnated in the carpenter Jesus. For the Gnostics, Adama and Seth were superior entities, not the first humans, just as the rest of the peoples considered them gods. We can thus conclude that biblical Adam and Eve are the great gods of the Sumerians, ENKI and NINHURSAG. Moreover, the legend of Lucifer, non-existent in the Bible, which we matched with the same ENKI, is a copy of the story of Adam. Lucifer was the first angel, the son of God. Adam was the first man, the son of Yahweh Elohim. Lucifer was expelled from heaven for sinning. Adam was expelled from the Garden of Eden, equated by Christians with heavenly paradise, for sinning. Lucifer was exiled to earth, just like Adam. Lucifer considered himself equal to God, and according to the Bible, Adam became like the Elohim gods, and Yahweh Elohim said, "Behold, the man is become as one of us, to know good and evil." Genesis 3 verse 22. The fall of Lucifer in Christianity is just the fall of Adam in the Old Testament, which means that for the inventor of this myth, Adam was not the first man, but the first god to reach earth. The exile caused by rape, found in many ancient religions, is actually an adaptation of the story of the rebellious Aeon, Sophia of the Gnostics. In the 2nd century, Bishop Irenaeus of Lyon wrote in Against Heresies, Sophia was inflamed by passion to embrace her parent Aeon, Thelitos. This passion first arose among those united with Nous and Aletheia, but it passed through the defilement of this degenerate Aeon, who committed wickedness under the guise of love, but this was in fact an influence of recklessness. Wickedness under the guise of love can only be rape, and the passion that consumed her, an influence of recklessness that led to defilement, suggests the same thing. Her sin was not the rape of Thelitos, but that of the Heavenly Father, Bythos/Anu, with Irenaeus also mentioning that her passion lay in seeking to investigate the nature of the Father, for she wished, as they say, to encompass the Father's greatness. As we have already seen, the spiritual rape took place because of Sophia's inability to procreate, which she hoped to obtain through forced union with the Supreme Aeon. The plan failed and she found herself imprisoned in the material world, with earth becoming her body. If Sophia is the rapist, why did the ancients attribute the act to ENKI? One clue is that Sophia, in Greek, means wisdom, and the god of wisdom in most cultures was ENKI. To find the truth, we must go back to the story of the exiled Aeon. Trapped in the material universe, becoming the earth, the exiled Sophia managed to extract billions of spirits from Enlil, which she imprisoned in the bodies of the animals and plants she created. Seeing himself in danger of being consumed by Sophia's new creations, Enlil tried to stop her through a series of extinctions that ultimately weakened her. Taking advantage of his opponent's weakened state, the son of Anu/Bythos resorted to the final solution to stop her once and for all. He divided her and imprisoned her in 2 different bodies. In the first chapter of the biblical Genesis, Elohim created men in his own image. In the image of Elohim created he him, male and female created he them. 1:27. According to Gnostic writings, Sophia, the feminine Aeon, assimilated her masculine counterpart, Thelitos, becoming an androgynous entity, which explains the hermaphroditism of the first men in the Bible. In the 2nd chapter, the 2 sexes were separated, and Yahweh Elohim caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept, and he took one of his ribs, and closed up the flesh instead thereof, and the rib, which Yahweh Elohim had taken from man, made he a woman, and brought her unto the men. 2:21-22. Although it may seem at first glance that the Bible describes a cloning process, the splitting of the men into 2 beings was not limited to matter but also to spirit. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of men. 2:23, says Adam in the book of Genesis. When Eve was still in Adam, there was no death. When she was separated from him, death entered into being. If he becomes whole again, as at the beginning, there will be no death, claims the Gospel of Philip. Then God, the Archon of the eons and powers, separated us with anger. Then we became 2 eons, says the Gnostic text, the discovery of Adam. From these passages we understand that the 2 beings, Adam and Eve, originally represented a single androgynous Aeon, that mixture of Sophia and Thelitos. Who was responsible for the separation? The Scythian Gnostics said that Sophia attempted to empty Ialdabaoth of his sprinkled light in order to deprive him of his power, through a man of great stature, secretly filled with nous, intelligence, and antimesis, thought. Ialdabaoth envied the men and tried to empty him of power with the help of the woman, Eve, whom he made from his own thought. Ialdabaoth was Enlil, the son of Anu, as we have already established. The man of great stature, who was being emptied of power, was Sophia trapped in the body of our planet. The creation of Eve from the thought of Ialdabaoth, that is the separation of Sophia into 2 eons, was the work of Enlil. In the discovery of Adam, the one who separated them with anger was the Archon of the Eons and Powers, that is the same god of storm. Even the Old Testament supports this hypothesis, the separation of Eve and Adam being attributed to one of the Elohim, the children of El, with Enlil being the first son of En/El/Bythos. The Old Testament book of Genesis states that Yahweh was the Elohim in question, but many researchers have concluded that the biblical myths depict the actions of other deities, which the God of the Jews replaced. The Sumerians also attributed the separation to the god of storm, Enlil being the one who separated heaven from earth. In this context, heaven represents a celestial entity, that is an aeon, none other than Sophia, which the son of Anu separated from earth. In other words, he removed the rebel from the body he had initially assigned to her, our planet. The two halves of Sophia, Adam and Eve of the Jews, have been considered in most cultures as the divine twins, represented by the Mesopotamian people in the form of two intertwined serpents, which represent the double helix structure of DNA, the acid found in every living being's cells, essential for the identity of any organism, invented by Sophia to create life. The Sumerians called the twins ENKI, Lord of the Earth, and NINHURSAG, Lady of the Earth, or Ki, Earth, because when they were united in a single entity, Sophia, their body was our planet. In the Bible, Adam's name comes from the term Adama, which means earth. Like the Sumerians, he received this name not because he was created from a dust of the earth, as the Old Testament claims, but because he was the planet Earth before separation. Unlike most peoples, who considered Earth to be a goddess, Sophia, for the Egyptians our planet was a god, Geb, whose name means earth and comes from the Sumerian word Gi, which has the same meaning. We matched Geb with the Sumerian Enki, and thus we understand the reason why he received this name. The having of Sophia or the division of the first Amun into male and female indicates an attempt to restore the initial eons, Sophia, wisdom, and Phelidos, desire. A failed attempt, apparently. If Enlil had succeeded, Enki would have had to be the god of desire and Ninki the goddess of wisdom. However, for the ancients, things were just the opposite. He was the god of wisdom and she was the goddess of sexuality. Sophia means wisdom in Greek, which is the main attribute of the fallen Aeon. For the Mesopotamians, Enki was the god of wisdom. Egyptian priest Manetho wrote about Enki, whom he called Jehudi, Thoth for the Greeks, that he understood the mysteries of everything that is hidden under the celestial vault, being considered the inventor of hieroglyphic writing, grammar, mathematics, laws, astronomy, and the calendar. At the same time, Ninki was the goddess of sexual desire and love, attributes of Phelidos. Enki was not only the embodiment of Sophia but also contained a part of Phelidos, so he was considered the god of fertility in most cultures. The same is true of his twin sister who, although mostly formed from the aeon called desire, also inherited Sophia's wisdom. The Chester Beatty Papyrus at the British Museum describes Isis as a wise woman, more intelligent than countless other gods. Nothing in heaven and on earth was unknown to her. She mastered the words of power, which she knew with the correct pronunciation, and she did not interrupt her speech, being faultless both in giving commands and in speaking the word, as noted by the famous Egyptologist Ernest Alfred Thompson Wallace Budge in Egyptian Magic and the Gods of the Egyptians. Thus, because the division of the rebellious Aeon did not go as Enlil had hoped, Enki and Ninki/NINHURSAG were not identical to Phelidos and Sophia, but rather two different beings that retained elements of both eons. Elements that were not in equal proportions. For the ancients, the proto-Earth in which Sophia was imprisoned was a giant planet covered in water, which is why the Mesopotamians considered her to be the goddess of the waters, Tiamat. Enki took on this attribute, becoming the god of the waters, with the Akkadians and Babylonians even calling him Ea, house of water. His house was Abzu, Tiamat's husband in Enuma Elish, a place located deep in the underground waters. In the text Enki in the World Order, the god said he was born in the sky and came to earth, where he cleared the swamps, filling them with fish, and then filled the Tigris and Euphrates rivers with life-giving water. From what we have seen, Sophia is the one who brought life to earth. In Christianity, Enki is Lucifer, the rebellious angel who attacked his father, exiled to earth for his act. For the Hittites and Hurrians he was Kamarbi, and for the Japanese he was Susanoo, both gods exiled to earth. In reality, Sophia was guilty of these deeds and was punished with exile. Planet Venus was associated with Lucifer, being the lost half of Proto-Earth after the impact with Jupiter. Cronus, the first ruler of Earth in Greek mythology and the leader of the Titans in the battle against the Olympians, is also Enki, but the first war of the gods was led by Zeus, Enlil, against Sophia. Not only Enki but also his sister were attributed with Sophia's deeds. the episode of the union of the fallen Aeon with the Heavenly Father Bythos/Anu, for the purpose of procreation, for the ancients had in the main role the goddess of love and sexuality. In Sumerian mythology, Inanna, the goddess of love and beauty, became the consort of the supreme god. The Egyptians had a similar myth in which Ra, the god of the sun and leader of the pantheon, was amused by his daughter, Hathor, the goddess of love, after she danced naked in front of him, then began to tickle him. Without a doubt, the striptease act and the touching of the heavenly emperor led to sex, since in a procession from the temple of Hathor in Dendera, her statue was taken from sanctuary to the roof, where a special chapel had been built for the ceremony of mating the goddess with the sun. Also in a Japanese myth, copied from the Egyptian one, the goddess of the sun, Amaterasu, locked herself in a celestial cave, only to emerge after a no-usum, girl of heaven, stripped naked and began to dance obscenely. The reason why NINHURSAG/Inanna was considered the goddess of love, sexuality, and fertility is not related to eroticism, but to the rebellious Aeon. Sex creates life, and Sophia was the creator of life in the material world by attracting spirits broken from Enlil. It is curious that although she was the goddess of sexuality, Enki's sister was considered a virgin in many cultures of the world. This epithet of hers also comes from the story of Sophia, who failed to conceive, like the Eons from Ogdoad and Decade, this inability leading to the attack on the emperor and her subsequent exile. Because she was unable to give birth naturally, for the ancients she remained a virgin. As Sophia no longer existed during the time of humans, but only her two halves, our ancestors transferred the virtue of virginity to the goddess of love. With the birth of the divine twins, Sophia disappeared from myths. However, the memory of her has not been completely erased, as the world religions briefly mention her. In Sumer she was called Nama or Namu, being one of the most important goddesses, although little known, who belonged to the oldest generation of deities, associated with the pantheon of Eridu, the city of Enki, and magic. In the ENKI and Ninma text, Nama is called the primordial mother who gave birth to the gods of the universe. In first tablet of the Ananam deity list she bears the titles Mother who gave birth to heaven and earth, and Mother of the god Enki, who took over most of her roles. In one myth she is also the mother of the goddess Ninjakuka, that is Ninki/NINHURSAG. In an inscription from a temple built in her honor, King Lugal-Kaisalasai described her as the consort of An, which reminds us of Sophia's mating with Bythos/Anu. For the Semites of Mesopotamia she was Tiamat, the primordial goddess of the ocean and chaos, consort of Absa/Apsu, the underground house of Enki. Indians called her Aditi, the first Vedic deity, mother of the gods and spirits, or Shakti, the primordial feminine energy that created the universe and was reincarnated in the wives of the three great Trimurti, Sarasvati, the goddess of arts, knowledge, music and words, Lakshmi or Sri, the goddess of wealth, love, luck, material and spiritual prosperity, and Parvati, the goddess of love, fertility and devotion. For the Aztecs she was Coatlicue, the goddess of the earth and death, Suacodal, the patroness of women who died in childbirth, and Tlazolteotl, the sinful and sexually impure goddess. In Greece she was known as Athena, Minerva for Romans, the virgin goddess of wisdom, courage, inspiration, civilization, justice, strategy, mathematics, arts and crafts, called Parthenos, virgin, and Promachos, first fighter. She is also Nyx, or Nox for Romans, the personification of night, and Hecate, called Trivia by Romans, the virgin goddess of witchcraft, crossroads, moon and necromancy, the ruler of the earth, seas and sky, the mother of angels and the cosmic soul of the world. In Egypt she was known as Heka, the personification of magic, Maat, the principle of truth, balance, order, law, morality and justice, or Neith, the virgin mother goddess, mistress of heaven, opener of the way, creator of childbirth, the goddess of war and hunting. Her last words, left to the people, are those mentioned on her temple in Sais, I am all that has been and all that will be. No mortal has ever lifted my veil. Sophia disappeared, the veil covered her and Enki and NINHURSAG were born, replacing her. The first biblical book, Genesis, can help us discover the story of the fallen Aeon's division and the birth of the divine twins, here called Adam and Eve. The author tells us in the first chapter that Elohim, male and female, created them, but in the second one we find out that the God made Adam first and Eve later. So, in the beginning, before Eve was made, Adam was male and female. We should not understand that Adam was a hermaphrodite being, but only that he was the body into which the androgynous Sophia was moved, who until then had the whole planet as her body. The word hermaphrodite comes from the Greek hermaphroditos, made up from the names of the gods Hermes and Aphrodite, ENKI, and NINHURSAG of the Sumerians, the divine twins born from Sophia's division. The transfer of the rebellious Aeon from one body to another is explained in the book as it was from 1976. The author Cyril Henry Hoskins claimed that the spirit of a Tibetan Lama, Lobsang I, was moved into his body by beings from a parallel reality, whom he called the gardeners of earth. Hoskins/Lobsang also said that these entities are accustomed to choosing individuals from whom they extract tiny silver cords from the neck area, which connect the body to the spirit, which they replace with those of the gardeners. In this way, according to the author, his spirit was replaced with that of the Tibetan. And probably the same happened to Sophia, transferred to Adam's body, a process described in the Bible as "and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul." The official version claims that Adam's body was made from a dust from the ground. The Hebrew term Adama, from which the biblical character's name comes, initially did not refer to any kind of soil but to the reddish-brown one. A similar word, Akkadian Adamatu, means red-brown soil. The color red is called Adam in Hebrew. All three words have their root in the word dam, which means blood. Additionally, the Akkadian word tit, dust, clay, synonymous with the Hebrew Adama, comes from the Sumerian tit, which would translate as that which has life. In Hebrew, tit means mud and is synonymous with the word bosh, which has the same root as a bosha, egg. Therefore, the dust actually refers to an egg or, more precisely, to an ovum, and the creation of a being in this way suggests an artificial conception or in vitro fertilization. At the same time, the unknown author of the biblical book suggests Adam's origin to be planet Earth, Sophia's body from her imprisonment until that moment. Thus, the name Adam can be interpreted in several ways: the one from earth, the one made of reddish-brown soil, the one made of blood, or the one made of ovum. Undoubtedly, Enlil used genetic material already existing on Earth at the time to create the new body of Sophia, which he improved to be able to support the immense amount of energy represented by the exiled Aeon. We do not know which species of animals was or were used to create Adam's body, but considering the similarity of the gods to humans, we can assume that it was the hominidae family of primates, to which humans also belong. Most likely, hominid genetic material was mixed with that of other species to create the much more complex DNA of the gods. Based on the physical appearance of the ancient gods or today's extraterrestrials, we can realize that Adam, Sophia's new body, was tall, blonde, with white skin and blue eyes. For the Scythian Gnostics he was a tall man, filled with intelligence and thought, and for the Egyptians he was Osiris, the Heliopolitan alter ego of Enki, who was almost 5 meters tall. Moved to a new body, Sophia was given the planet to rule. "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." Genesis 1 verse 26, Enlil said to the other Elohim, who formed the council of the gods. Then he moved her to a garden to dress it and to keep it, 2:15, where every tree that is pleasant to the sight, and good for food, 2:9, grew. In that place, the son of Anu brought every beast of the field, and every fowl of the air, 2:19, so that Sophia could name them. And Adam gave names to all cattle, and to the fowl of the air, and to every beast of the field, 2:20, as the Old Testament claims, meaning she studied the animals that she had created in a specially designed place, a kind of a nature reserve. Regarding the garden, from the fact that she had to dress it and to keep it, we understand Sophia's true role entrusted by Enlil, to take care of the animals and plants that she created on the planet that once served as her body. Her two halves, the divine twins, were crowned as the king and queen of the earth, titles symbolized in Sumer by the numbers 50 and 45. Regarding the Garden of Eden, which reminds us of the gardeners of the earth, mentioned in as it was by Cyril Henry Hoskins/Lobsang I, St. John Damascene, considered the last church father, wrote about it in chapter 11 of his Dogmatica in the 8th century. Calling it paradise, he claimed that it is located in the east, higher than all the earth. It has a temperate climate and is illuminated by very fine and clean air, covered with perpetually blooming plants, full of the fragrance of good perfume, filled with light, surpassing the notion of any beauty and adornment felt, a truly divine land and a dwelling worthy of the one made in the image and likeness of God. 3.5 centuries earlier, Basil the Great, also considered a saint of the Christian Church, wrote it in Hexaemeros that God planted the paradise there where there was no violence of the winds, no mismatch of the 4 elements and 4 seasons of the year, no hail, no lightning that ignite, no thunderbolts that strike, no frost, no spring humidity, no summer heat, no autumn drought. There, the flower shines not for a short time. The good fragrance is without equal, the beautiful. Color always shines. There are many kinds of birds, which through the beauty of their wings and the sweet singing of their voices, add such wonderful sweetness to those who see them, that man feasts through all his senses, some seeing them, others hearing them, others touching them, others smelling them and tasting from others. Sophia was not left whole in Adam's body, but was divided. It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him an helpmeet for him. 2:18, said the God of the storm in the same biblical Genesis. Therefore, Yahweh Elohim caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept, and he took one of his ribs, and closed up the flesh instead thereof, and the rib, which Yahweh Elohim had taken from man, made he a woman, and brought her unto the man. 2:21-22. In other words, Sophia was anesthetized for the separation surgery. For Eve's body the Adam vessel was cloned. As we have already shown, the rib from which she was created represents a wordplay, ti meaning rib and life, in Sumerian, confirming that she was created from both his genetic material and his life essence. Then God, the Archon of the eons and powers, separated us in anger. Then we became two eons, as the discovery of Adam claims. The mixture of Thelitos and Sophia, desire and wisdom, became the divine twins ENKI and NINHURSAG, or Adam and Eve in the biblical version. In Genesis, Enlil imposed a golden rule on ENKI, and Yahweh Elohim commanded the men, saying, Of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof thou shalt surely die. 2:16-17. As mentioned before, knowledge in the Bible refers to sexuality, and the forbidden fruit actually symbolizes Eve's virginity. In other words, the commandment could be phrased as, If you touch your sister, I will kill you. However, obeying this commandment proved to be impossible. Her beauty, praised by all ancient peoples, could not go unnoticed by ENKI. A hymn to Ishtar, written around 1600 BC, can help us understand the daily temptation that the young god had to face. She is clothed in allure and affection. She is full of life, charm, and pleasure. Ishtar is dressed in allure and tenderness. She is full of life, charm, and pleasure. Her lips are sweet, there is life in her mouth. Everything rejoices at her appearance. She is majestic, she has expensive veils on her head. Her face is beautiful, her eyes are shining dot. Struggling with his sexual desire, or perhaps even love, that tormented him, trying to follow the commandment, ENKI eventually gave in at one point. He decided to ignore the order and follow his heart's voice. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field. 3:1, the Bible says, finally convincing his sister to give up her virginity and taste the forbidden fruit of sexuality. The woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise. 3:6, and she began a secret relationship with her brother, far from the eyes of Enlil, among the numerous trees of the garden, and they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. 2:25. This is how the Hittite myth of Alakami describes the relationship between Kamarbi and the mountain goddess. But he lay with the mountain goddess, and she knew his manhood. 5 times he clasped her in his arms. 10 times he embraced her in his arms. A Sumerian myth, preserved on a tablet labeled BM 23631, suggests that she was the one who made the first move. Here, Inanna asked her brother to help her go to a mysterious place where different plants and trees grow. She wanted to eat them to know the secrets of sexuality, of which she was still ignorant. As for women, I do not know men. As for women, I do not know love. Her brother accepted, and she tasted the fruits, which brought her the desired knowledge. However, the Inanna and Shukalatuda fragmented myth abandoned symbolism, replacing the tasting of the fruit with sex. In the same mysterious garden, trying to obtain knowledge, Inanna lay down and fell asleep. Taking advantage of her fatigue, an unknown guy named Shukalatuda approached and raped her. In both myths of Inanna, the action takes place in a garden with trees that can offer knowledge of sexuality, just like in the Bible. In the first myth, her brother helps her obtain that knowledge, while the second one supports the version of sexual aggression, mentioned by other peoples as well. However, regardless of who seduced whom, it seems that it was not a rape, but rather consensual sex. In Hinduism, it is believed that the relationship between Shiva and Shakti, the same ENKI and NINHURSAG, gave rise to Tantra Yoga and Kama Sutra, a text composed by Nandi, Shiva's gatekeeper, after witnessing some hot scenes in his master's bedroom. Indians still have numerous graphic representations of sexual acts between Shiva and Shakti or Kali. People will make my bed fertile, cover it with lapis lazuli-colored plants, bring my lover there, bring Amisham Galana there, he will take my hand, his sleep is so refreshing, his heart pressing against mine, his pleasure is so sweet, Inanna said in a Sumerian text. Another one, called ENKI and NINHURSAG, A Myth of Paradise, describes the explosive end of such a sexual act, claiming that her scream made his penis wet the ditches. And in the Vedas his semen filled a lake. But their orgasmic happiness did not last long. The Old Testament suggests that after one of their countless incestuous mating, the twins fell asleep naked. Waking up in the evening, they realized that they could be caught and hastened to cover themselves with what they found, and the eyes of them both were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. 3:7. Unfortunately for them, Enlil came in their garden, and they heard the voice of Yahweh Elohim walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of Yahweh Elohim amongst the trees of the garden. 3:8. Being called, Enki had to come out naked from behind the trees, and Yahweh Elohim called unto Adam, and said unto him, Where art thou? And he said, I heard thy voice in the garden, and I was afraid, because I was naked, and I hid myself. 3:9-10. Probably a little shocked by that indecent appearance, Enlil asked, Hast thou eaten of the tree, whereof I commanded thee that thou shouldest not eat? 3:11. Having no choice, Adam confessed his wrongdoing, but claimed that he was seduced. The woman whom thou gavest to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I did eat. 3:12. And it is possible that he told the truth, because the tablet BM 23631 suggests that she was the one who made the first move. Eve/NINHURSAG, in turn, blamed her brother, and Yahweh Elohim said unto the woman, What is this that thou hast done? And the woman said, The serpent beguiled me, and I did eat. 3:13. By claiming that the serpent deceived her, Eve implied that she was raped by the one called the serpent, a version echoed in the myths of many peoples. He laid upon me his dirty hands, she complained in a text called by Stephen Herbert Langdon A Classic Liturgy of Inanna, in an article published in the Journal of Assyriology and Oriental Archaeology. In the Descent of Inanna, she looks at him with the look of death, she speaks to him with words of anger, and she shouts at him with the cry of guilt. Believing her, Enlil burst forth in his stormy style, as quoted in the Bible, Because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle, and above every beast of the field, upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. 3:14. And cursed is the ground for thy sake. 3:17, meaning that our planet will become his place of damnation or his prison, which it already was, in fact. I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed, it shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. 3:15, he added. And he kept his word, as proved in the Sumerian text Inanna and Abi, where the supreme God advised Inanna to sue the one called the Great Serpent, Azag, the place of water, a name identical to Ea, assigned by the Akkadians to Enki, meaning the house of water. At the trial held by the Council of the Gods, Enlil stated, According to the Bible, behold, the man is become as one of us, to know good and evil, and now, lest he put forth his hand, and take also of the tree of life, and eat, and live forever. 3:22. The Popol Vuh of the Mayans presents the words of the God in a similar way. Must they become like us, their makers, who can see far, who know everything, who see everything? Must they themselves be gods? The sentence was given shortly afterwards, deciding that Enki would be separated from his consort, although the Old Testament tries to hide the real reason for the expulsion. Therefore Yahweh Elohim sent him forth from the Garden of Eden, to till the ground from whence he was taken. 3:23. The Inanna and Abi text describe the same sentence. The great serpent was found guilty by the judges and punished. We also have the CT.15.28-29 tablet from the Sumerians, which states that the shepherd Dumuzi, the true son, an alter ego of Enki, raped his sister, Inanna. His heart was filled with tears text states that he was punished for this act. In another text called the Lament for Sumer and Urim, 7 policemen catch Dumuzi near the great dam in the Amash, house of snakes, desert. Taken from his own home, Dumuzi was sent to the underworld, which led most people to believe he was killed, matching the underworld with hell. Therefore, in the death of Dumuzi, the god is killed by 5 gala demons in his sister Inanna's sheepfold. The same can be seen in the Egyptian myth of Osiris, who was killed and became the ruler of the underworld. If he were truly dead, he could not have returned afterwards to impregnate his wife. To complete the god of wisdom's exile, a Sumerian tablet depicts Enki bound by hands and feet, accompanied by snakes and a star from which an arrow points downwards. The star was a symbol for a god, and the arrow, in archaic Sumerian, reads bur, buru, meaning banished. Therefore, the tablet implies that Enki was the exiled god and the arrow pointing downwards indicates his destination, the underworld. Enki's arrest was not without incident, as Sumerian texts claim that he was caught only after a Hollywood-style chase. When caught, Enki was attacked by those policemen, sometimes called demons, a sign that he was not willing to surrender without a fight. Here's how the myth of the death of Dumuzi describes the event. The first demon enters the sheepfold, pushing Dumuzi with a needle in the cheek, a tranquilizer injection. Author's note: the second demon enters the sheepfold, beating Dumuzi on the cheek with his shepherd's stick. The third demon enters the sheepfold, and the holy churn changes places. The fourth demon enters the sheepfold, and the sacred casket falls from its peg. The fifth demon enters the sheepfold. The churn is broken, it doesn't receive milk anymore. How old was Enki when he was exiled? Called Dumuzi by the Sumerians, Tammuz by the Akkadians, and Adonis by the Greeks and Phoenicians, the god was young and handsome. Unfortunately, there is no indication of his age. Nevertheless, in On Isis and Osiris, historian Plutarch wrote that some Egyptians believed that Osiris reigned for 28 years, while others believed that he lived for 28 years. Most likely, 28 is his age at the time of his exile. After expelling Adam, the Bible claims that Enlil placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubims, and a flaming sword which turned every way, to keep the way of the tree of life, Genesis 3 verse 24. Although cherubim currently define a class of angels in Christianity, for Jews they were creatures with lion or bull bodies, eagle wings, and human heads. The Greeks called these creatures sphinxes, the Indians Purushamriga, the Sumerians Lama and Alad, and the Akkadians Lamassu and Shidu. Could such creatures be the ones referred to in the biblical story? In the Old Testament, the supreme God is often called He who sits on the cherubim, most likely because of the prophet Ezekiel, who saw how the glory of the God of Israel was gone up from the cherub, Book of Ezekiel 9 verse 3. This God moved in a whirlwind that came out of the north, a great cloud, and a fire enfolding itself, and a brightness was about it, and out of the midst thereof is the color of amber, out of the midst of the fire. Also out of the midst thereof came the likeness of 4 living creatures. And this was their appearance, they had the likeness of a man. And every one had 4 faces, and every one had 4 wings. And their feet were straight feet, and the sole of their feet was like the sole of a calf's foot, and they sparkled like the color of burnished brass. And they had the hands of a man under their wings on their 4 sides, and they 4 had their faces and their wings. Their wings were joined one to another, they turned not when they went every one straight forward. As for the likeness of their faces, they 4 had the face of a man, and the face of a lion, on the right side, and they 4 had the face of an ox on the left side, they 4 also had the face of an eagle. Thus were their faces, and their wings were stretched upward, 2 wings of every one were joined one to another, and 2 covered their bodies. And they went every one straight forward, whither the Spirit was to go, they went, and they turned not when they went. As for the likeness of the living creatures, their appearance was like burning coals of fire, and like the appearance of lamps, it went up and down among the living creatures, and the fire was bright, and out of the fire went forth lightning. And the living creatures ran and returned as the appearance of a flash of lightning. Now as I beheld the living creatures, behold, one will upon the earth by the living creatures, with his 4 faces. The appearance of the wheels and their work was like unto the color of a barrow, and they 4 had one likeness, and their appearance and their work was as it were a wheel in the middle of a wheel, 1:4-16. This strange means of transportation for Yahweh seems to be an aircraft, described in a simplistic manner by a man who lived several millennia ago, a conclusion reached in the early 1970s by NASA researcher Joseph Blumrich. Furthermore, German engineer Hans Herbert Bayer sketched a drawing based on the building that Ezekiel constructed for the chariot of the Lord, proving that the biblical God's shuttle fit perfectly in Yahweh's temple in Jerusalem. The 4 beasts comprising the vessel, with the heads of a man, ox, lion, and eagle, led the Jews to think of cherubim, which were made of parts of these 4 creatures. We also notice from other books of the Bible that the cherubim were actually divine means of transportation, and he rode upon a cherub, and did fly, yea, he did fly upon the wings of the wind, Psalm 18 verse 10, or he bowed the heavens also, and came down, and darkness was under his feet. And he rode upon a cherub, and did fly, and he was seen upon the wings of the wind. And he made darkness pavilions round about him, dark waters, and thick clouds of the skies. Through the brightness before him were coals of fire kindled, 2 Samuel 22 verses 10 to 13. If in the Bible the cherubim are flying machines, most likely the same thing is true in Genesis. The tree of life was in the garden of the gods, and the Ach's way was guarded by cherubim with a flaming sword, and we understand that Enlil put flying machines to prevent the banished god from returning. Chaldean oracles claimed something similar, stating that at the border between the intelligible world, the world of the gods, and the sensible one, the material universe, there were lynxes, mysterious beings whose names would be translated as wheels or whirlwinds. They were considered spheres that spun in all directions, created by the divine thought, representing the connection between divine and physical things. The lynxes created by the Father's thought are also intelligent, being moved by wills impossible to understand. For the Mesopotamians, the gods had also put strange beings to guard the path. Some scorpion men guarded the gates of Mount Masu, in which there was a dark tunnel leading to the Garden of the Gods, a place several deities lived, full of plants with precious stones, located near the sea. Are there really lynxes/cherubim? In 2012, NASA released 2 photos showing some strange structures that are thought to be life forms traveling through the universe. They were called Assyriids and are believed to populate cosmic space, living either independently or in colonies. Their way of life and how they evolved is not known, but researchers have identified dozens of organic compounds in space that could provide certain conditions for the development of these Assyriids. Many believe that these creatures are actually biological extraterrestrial ships used by other civilizations to travel through space. Let's not forget that the lynxes from the Chaldean oracles were mechanized beings that traveled through space, and the cherubim from the Jews were also mechanical beings used by the biblical God for transport. In 1960, NASA researchers Manfred Klebs and Nathan S. Klein even spoke in an article about a man-machine system they called Cyborg that could survive in cosmic space. Whether it's biological ships or cybernetic organisms, lynxes, cherubim, and Assyriids seem to be the same things. Did these creatures actually guard the way to the Garden of the Gods in Eden? Most likely not. Sophia was exiled from the ethereal dimension of the eons and imprisoned in the material world. Earth became her prison, where she was supposed to spend eternity. A place on Earth, a garden in Eden, did not matter. For the eons it was important that she do not return to their immaterial world. Because the Garden of the Gods was mistaken from the beginning with a place in the sky, which still happens today, the separation of the divine twins was matched with Sophia's exile. Even though the Bible is quite clear that the Garden of Eden was an earthly place located east of where Adam's body was made, where a river flowed and split into 4 branches, 2 of which were the Tigris and Euphrates in Mesopotamia. Furthermore, no one could have brought all the animals from Earth to a place in the sky so that Adam could name them. And lynxes/cherubim/Assyriids are in cosmic space, which means they guard the path of the exiles to heaven, not to the earthly garden. This version is supported by the presence of an energy barrier surrounding our planet, which does not allow the trespassing of any living organism. In 1907, Carl Stormer anticipated the magnetic trap role of the geomagnetic field. It was only in 1958, processing data transmitted by the artificial satellites Explorer 2 and 4, that American researcher James Van Allen discovered the existence of 2 radiation zones at different altitudes surrounding the Earth. The inner one, which extends between 1,000 and 6,000 kilometers altitude, is mainly made up of high-energy protons, 10 to 200 megaelectronvolts, while the outer one, located between 15,000 and 25,000 kilometers, is made up mostly of high-energy electrons, 1 to 200 kiloelectronvolts. In 1963, a third radiation belt was noticed, located between the first 2, mostly made up of electrons. In 2006, satellite Pamela detected antiprotons, particles of antimatter, in the middle belt. This triple torus, made up of particles of energy, was named after its discoverer, James Van Allen. Soon after, scientists discovered that the Van Allen belt is lethal to living organisms. CNN reported at one point, the radiation belt surrounding Earth may be much more dangerous to astronauts than initially thought. These radiations could have an effect on astronauts, affecting their health. Radiation electrons can penetrate various materials, including astronaut suits and spacecraft walls. Furthermore, it is lethal to any living organism. In 1994, in an interview with journalist Sheena McDonald, the then head of NASA, Dan Goblin, admitted that humanity cannot venture into space more than 400 kilometers until a way is found to safely cross the deadly radiation zone. He probably forgot that since 1969, Americans claim they sent humans to the moon, which is 400,000 kilometers away from Earth. In reality, all space missions with human crews on board have taken place under the radiation belt. In 2014, NASA engineer Kelly Smith hinted that humanity had not succeeded in reaching the moon. Referring to the Orion spacecraft, launched on a test flight on December 5, 2014, he stated, "Orion has to be a powerful spacecraft, to go at high speeds, to withstand extreme temperatures and extreme radiation. Before we send astronauts into space, we need to test all systems. The Orion spacecraft has to go through the Van Allen belt, an area with dangerous radiation. Sensors on board will record radiation data that scientists will study. We have to solve these challenges before we send people through this space region." If NASA had really sent humans to the moon, it could use the same technology today to protect astronauts, without the need for new studies and tests. Moreover, it is said that in 1958, the U.S. military conducted Operation Argus, detonating rockets with nuclear warheads over the southern Atlantic Ocean in an attempt to break through the Van Allen belts. 3 years later, in the secret Starfish Prime test, the Americans detonated another atomic bomb 400 kilometers above Johnson Island in the Pacific Ocean. The effect of these explosions was devastating, as numerous artificial satellites were destroyed and a new radiation belt formed around Earth, similar to the natural one, a real additional shield of electrons around the planet, as Greek physicist Nicholas Christophilos from the Lawrence Radiation Laboratory called it. In 2002, this artificial zone was 25 times more dangerous than the most intense natural radiation zone. Thus, humans strengthened the shield around our planet, which does not allow the passage of any living organism. Undoubtedly, the radiation belts are the work of Enlil, who ensured that the exiles would not leave their prison under any circumstances. According to the pyramid texts, before leaving the Garden of Eden, Osiris/Enki's last words to his sister were said as a cry for help, "Hurry to me." After he left, Egyptian myths claim that Isis searched for him everywhere, crying and pulling out her hair. "Oh, my brother, my lord, gone to the land of silence. Return with the face of old, and put an end to my pain. Return to the world, return. Return, for I thirst. To drink your image slowly with my eyes. My arms are heavy, always reaching to protect you. Weary from waiting, weary from longing. O brother, beloved lord of nameless love. Return to your dear home, come back to the world." In Ugarit it was believed that Anat's heart was broken for Baal, who was also sent to the underworld, like the heart of a cow for a calf, like the heart of a ewe for a lamb. In the lament for the disappearance of Dumuzi, the goddess Inanna says, "I lie here like the mooing cow, like the ewe mourning for her lamb. I lie here like the mooing cow, like the goat mourning for her kid. In the sanctuary of the deep I will search for him. In the sanctuary of the high I will search for him. The hero, my lord, where is he? My thoughts are only of him. Ah, he who is hungry for me, my thoughts are only of him." To the despair of the celestial gods, the girl decided to follow her beloved brother into exile. This should not surprise us, considering the love she had for her other half in all of the above texts. In the descent of Ishtar into the underworld, a text discovered by George Smith in the library of the Assyrian king Ashurbanipal, the goddess arrived to the gate of the otherworld. Ishtar knocked on the gate, insisting, "Gatekeeper, gatekeeper, hurry up, and open the gate sooner. Don't hesitate, gatekeeper, for a moment, but let me enter your land. For if you refuse, I will easily destroy it from its foundations. I will pull the big door off its hinges. I will break the hinges, threshold, lock, and the gates with many sides, heavy. I will knock them down, it wouldn't be too hard for me. I will rescue from the prison of death, and they will eat the living. And thus the dead would be much more than the living on earth. From the great, celestial plains, O goddess Ishtar, do not knock on the heavy gate." The gatekeeper said, "I will go to give the news to Ereshkigal, my mistress." After receiving permission to pass, along with additional instructions, the guard asked Inanna/Ishtar to leave one of her possessions at each of the 7 gates. Thus, the goddess gave up, one by one, her crown, earrings, pearl necklace, expensive clothing that covered her chest, the birthstone belt, bracelets from her hands and feet and the garments from the lower part of her body. The abandonment of all these objects, without logic for most researchers, actually means giving up all her royal insignia, implicitly the title of Queen of Earth, received when Sophia's halves were given the planet to care for. Disinherited and naked, Ishtar/NINHURSAG crossed to the other side, where the goddess Ereshkigal tied her up, from which we can understand that it was forbidden for her also to return to the garden of the gods. Which did not matter to her at all, once she found herself again in the arms of her beloved. Your sister, Isis, has come to you enjoying the love she had for you, says an excerpt from the pyramid text addressed to Osiris. The Incas also kept this episode in their legends. The supreme god, the sun, sent his son and daughter to Earth, who were not only siblings, but also husband and wife, to live among mortals. According to Sumerian legends, once on our planet, Enki built the city of Eridu, the far-built house, today Tel Abu Sharain in Iraq, also called Eridu, the Great Place, or Nunki, the Prince's Land, whose shadow extends over the Snake Swamp. Many archaeologists confirm the myths, considering Eridu the oldest city in the world. The Sumerian king list shows the same thing. The first two divine rulers of the world, Alulim and Alaugar, ruled in Eridu, their reigns totaling 18 or 64,800 years. The Bible also gives us a clue to identifying Enki with Adam. If Eridu was the city where Enki and his people lived, one of Adam's descendants was named Jared, Yared in Hebrew, which can be translated as the one from Eridu. Why were the divine twins separated immediately after their sexual relationship was discovered? Undoubtedly, it was not just Enlil's decision, but also the decision of the Council of the Gods, with Anu's approval in this matter, just as when Sophia was imprisoned in the material world. Why did the relationship of the twins bother the Council of the Eons so much? In Christianity, Lucifer was cast out to earth because he tried to take his father's place. For the Hittites, Aula was dethroned and exiled to our planet, just like the Aztecs believed, where Quetzalcoatl threw Tezcatlipoca to earth to become the new ruler of the world. The Greeks believed that Uranus, who could see the future, locked up his children because he knew that one of them would dethrone him. The Egyptians had a similar version, historian Plutarch reporting that the reason why Ra prevented Nut from giving birth was the fear of a usurpation of his own power. According to this version, Ra was not afraid, like Uranus, that one of his children would take his throne, but a grandchild. The Scandinavians also recounted that Loki and his children were expelled from Asgard, the world of the gods, because of a prophecy that they would destroy the gods. Although the ancients believed that the exile was due to the fear of the supreme god of losing his throne, we saw that Sophia did not attempt to usurp power, but only to obtain the ability to procreate. Considering the other myths, we understand that the fear of the Heavenly Father was related to the appearance of a child. Surprisingly or not, the Bible supports the same version. Behold, the man is become as one of us, to know good and evil, and now, lest he put forth his hand, and take also of the tree of life, and eat, and live forever. Genesis 3 verse 22, Enlil said during Enki's trial. The gods banished Adam/Enki to prevent him from tasting from the tree of life. What could this tree be? Obviously, another metaphor, just like the tree of knowledge. To eat from the tree of life means to create life. Or, in other words, to give birth to a child. The gods' fear that Adam might taste from the tree of life after eating from the tree of knowledge is nothing but the fear of a child being born from the sexual relationship between the twins. This is why only Adam was exiled, and not his sister. They were separated to stop the sexual relationships that would have led to the birth of a child. The Egyptians believed the same thing, with Geb and Nut being separated by Ra before she became pregnant. However, the plan of the gods was thwarted by the decision of the girl to follow her heart. Why did Enki and NINHURSAG end up having a romantic relationship? Did Sophia try to be whole again by uniting her two halves? Did the same passion that overtook Sophia when she embraced her parent Aeon, Phelitos, appear in the divine twins? Was it love? Or was Sophia trying to fulfill her desire from when she was in the spiritual world of the Eons, namely to give birth to a child? Perhaps the answer is not a single one, but all of these together. In Plato's Dialogue Symposium, the philosopher included the story of Sophia and the divine twins, adapted to the Greek religion. He said that the first humans were androgynous. Endowed with miraculous strength and virtue, with boundless audacity, just as Homer says about Ephialtes and Odos, they began to climb to the heavens to lay hands on the gods. Then Zeus and the other gods consulted on what to do, and they were unable to decide. Eventually, Zeus made a decision. I think I have found a way to force people to give up their insolence. I will make them weaker. I shall cut each one in two, and they will immediately become more helpless. The king of the gods got to work and divided the androgynous beings in two. And after nature had split them in two, each half yearned to merge with the other half. When they met, they embraced each other so tightly that in their longing to merge, they forgot about food and everything else and became unable to do anything else because they didn't want to do anything without the other. As people were preoccupied with searching for their other halves, Zeus and the other Olympian gods were able to rule peacefully, being out of danger. Eros is the one who unites the fragments of the old nature. He takes pains to make two beings into one. He tries to heal the misery of human nature, Plato noted. Although it seems like a romantic story, the Greek philosopher's account only represents the legend of Sophia. She was the androgynous Aeon, becoming so after assimilating Thalidos, who was cut in two by Enlil, called Zeus in Greek mythology, after he attempted to attack the world of the gods/Aeons. Her two halves, ENKI and NINHURSAG, when they met, they embraced each other so tightly that in their longing to merge, they forgot about food and everything else and became unable to do anything else because they didn't want to do anything without the other. They were the two lovers known by the Jews as Adam and Eve and by the Egyptians as Asar, Osiris, and Aset, Isis, twin souls both literally and figuratively. In the Romanian novel Adam and Eve, whose title was not chosen by chance, the writer Liviu Rebrinus seems to refer to the same divine twins, the first twin souls. The main characters are a man and a woman, originating from the same unit that separated into two and entered the material world, who seek each other for 7 lives to reunite and regain their initial paradisiacal unity. In each of the 7 lives, they meet and recognize each other through their gaze. When their eyes met, he trembled to the very depths of his being, as if all the mysteries of life had suddenly become clear to him. The man who reunites with his original half in the material plane, becoming whole again, has a vision of all 7 of their lives at the end of his life, and when his spirit leaves his body, one can see in his eyes the joy that brings a special spark from heavenly realms. In Rebrinus' vision, the reciprocal, irresistible and unconscious search is the purpose of human life on earth, because the union of soulmates can only in material life be redemptive. For psychoanalysis, the half we seek belongs to the realm of the imaginary, being nostalgic for the mother-infant fusion in the first months of life, which we try to find throughout our lives. We invent an ideal partner with whom we can communicate without words, who protects and offers us what we lack. This may be true for humans, but not for the divine twins, whose love in the Garden of Eden, which caused their separation, was as real as it can be. However, Enlil and the rest of the Eons of the Council did not know what the writer Robert Brault discovered. What we find in our soulmate is not something wild to tame, but something wild to move forward with. ENKI and NINHURSAG could not stay apart for long, as she followed her other half because the bond between soulmates goes beyond, till death do us part, because true love never dies, as Richard Webster claimed. And the love of the divine twins made them parents, with the much-feared children finally being born, much to the despair of the celestial gods.